The transport ship smelled like a wet sock lost inside a microwave. Mason Reich had barely stepped onto the offloading ramp before gagging, swearing, and tripping over his own duffel bag, which had just enough leftover grenade shrapnel in it to be considered a war crime. Nobody offered to help him. It was that kind of base. Too many medals, not enough manners. But Reich didn't care. He was finally off Cyrex Prime, away from the sulfur storms and the screaming sand and the nine-legged lizards that liked to bite your toes when you slept. He was going home. Or rather, to something that vaguely resembled home if you ignored the fact that it was a prefab box the size of a supply crate with plumbing that hiccuped like it had PTSD. He rubbed the back of his neck as the base commander droned through the usual welcome back nonsense. Commendation for bravery, distinguished conduct, and something about exceeding expectations during high-value asset retrieval. Reich zoned out until a word pierced through the fog of boredom. Reward. He blinked. I'm sorry, what? The officer, a slender woman with a voice like a malfunctioning food processor, pushed a datapad into his hand. Reward. You've been assigned a prize under Article 17, subsection beta. Congratulations, Corporal Reich. Enjoy your new asset. He stared at the form. What is this? A blender. The officer gave him a tight smile that suggested she would very much like to throw him out an airlock. It's a sentient, alien, female, biocompatible, category Delta. Do not attempt resale or modification. Reich was still trying to figure out what biocompatible meant when a door hissed open behind him, and in walked what he could only describe as a disaster in slow motion. She looked human. Almost. Skin like porcelain with a faint violet sheen, eyes that seemed to glow faintly gold in low light, and ears. Long, elegant, definitely not regulation. She wore a plain gray robe, hands folded neatly in front of her, and her expression was blank, unreadable. She was tall, lean, and moved like someone who didn't care about walls or rules or physics. Reich's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Oh no, no, this is a mistake. I asked for leave time and, maybe a bonus. You can't just hand me a person. The officer ignored him. The woman did not. She stared directly at him, unblinking, like she was deciding whether he was edible. This isn't happening, Reich muttered. But it was. Within the hour, she was standing in his transport pod, silently examining the clutter like a queen, inspecting the ruins of her empire. He tried to tidy up. That involved knocking over a crate of protein cubes and accidentally sitting on a wrench. Okay, he said, wheezing. First rule, I'm not calling you asset. That's messed up. Do you have a name? No answer. Right. How about Eliah? I once had a cactus named Eliah. She lasted 4 days. Still no answer, but he could have sworn her ears twitched. He tried again. You hungry? I have these ration bars. They taste like sadness, but with a hint of chocolate, maybe? She took the bar, sniffed it, set it down. Well, that's fair. The next few days were a bizarre blend of military briefings, awkward silences, and him trying not to make eye contact with the woman who now technically lived with him. She moved silently, gracefully, always watching. She didn't sleep, or eat, or speak, which would have been fine except Reich couldn't stop talking. It was a nervous thing. So, my first assignment was guarding a toilet on a mining rig. No, really, a toilet. One of those deluxe gravity-regulated ones. Very high stakes. Someone tried to smuggle a hedgehog through it. Don't ask. No reaction. Right. Tough crowd. He started giving her tasks, just to see what would happen. Take this data pad. Sort these rations. Don't kill me in my sleep. She did all three, efficiently. The last one was still up for debate, though. What unnerved him most wasn't her silence. It was how she seemed to understand things without needing to be told. She rearranged his kitchen so efficiently it made him feel like a caveman with a can opener. His inventory system, previously built on the sacred pillars of somewhere around here, and probably under that thing, was now cross-referenced, tagged, and voice searchable. She even fixed the coffee unit. It no longer screamed. One evening, as he was halfway through explaining the highly classified difference between 2 flavors of military-issued chewing gum, he caught her smirking. Just a little. Aha, he said, pointing triumphantly. You do have facial muscles. I knew it. Her expression flattened instantly. Too late, he said. I saw it. That was definitely the beginning of a smile. You can't take it back. It happened. He paused. You're not going to kill me, are you? No answer. Again. He started keeping a notebook titled Things She Might Find Funny But Doesn't. So far it included chewing gum anecdote, ration bar haiku, impression of General Holtz. Honestly, that one was gold. Still, she stayed. She listened. She reorganized. And once, when he came back from drills limping and mumbling about his bruised dignity, she handed him a perfectly folded blanket and a cup of the least bad instant soup. No words, just a look. Software curious, maybe a little amused. The next day, someone tried to assign Reich a maintenance droid. He declined, saying, I already have a terrifyingly competent roommate who might be psychic. Thanks, though. His commanding officer frowned. Roommate? Reward. Biocompatible asset. Yeah, that. Officially, she remained property. Unofficially, Reich was beginning to suspect he might be hers. Reich had never been particularly good at living with other people, or creatures, or things that breathed air and had opinions. His bunkmates during training had voted unanimously to move their sleep cycles to avoid his late-night snacking habits. One claimed the sound of Reich crunching protein flakes was haunting. Another said he once whispered to a sandwich in his sleep. But somehow living with Eliah was different, mostly because she made no noise. Ever. No snacking, no muttering, no dramatic sighs about the state of the laundry pile. She was a ghost with excellent posture. Still, the silence was starting to get to him. He began narrating his daily routines out loud, hoping to spark some reaction. Okay, breakfast. Do we want the green mush or the brown mush? Neither is technically food, but we live on the edge in this house. Nothing. Green it is. Good call. He thought about naming the different ration mushes just to give them more personality. Maybe the green one was Gerald. The brown one could be Martha. He was halfway through writing a dramatic backstory for them when he looked up and saw Eliah staring at him, one long ear arched like a sarcastic comma. What? He asked. It's character development. She turned away, but he was pretty sure she was holding back a smirk again. It was becoming a thing. A game, maybe. Make the stoic alien smile. Points awarded for creativity. Bonus if it involved exploding kitchen appliances. She wasn't smiling when she caught him trying to rig up a hover sled using spare conduit coils and a laundry basket, though. In his defense, he had a perfectly valid reason. Carrying supplies to the outpost took too long, and HoverTech was just sitting there, unused like a gift from the trash gods. He didn't notice her behind him until the basket lurched, flipped, and launched itself and Reich into the air with the enthusiastic whine of uncalibrated stabilizers. He landed on his back. The laundry basket landed on his head. Eliah stared down at him. He held up a finger. Before you say anything, this is what humans call innovation. She said nothing, but also possibly a concussion. She walked away. Later that week, Reich came back from drills to find her perched on the roof of the prefab shelter, legs crossed, eyes closed, meditating probably, or plotting galactic revenge. Hard to tell. He brought her a cup of his least offensive synth tea and climbed up beside her. You know, he said, sipping carefully, when I first got here, I thought you were going to kill me in my sleep. One eye opened. I considered it. He nearly dropped the cup. That's good. Honesty builds trust. Her gaze returned to the horizon. Pale light danced across the nearby moons. The base hummed in the distance. Neon towers flickering with transmission bursts and auto-patrol drones zipping through the air like lazy lightning bugs. Why didn't you? He asked, half joking. I wanted to see if you'd die on your own. Ouch! Savage. Fair, though. Another pause, a silence heavy enough to feel like gravity. And then, unexpectedly, you snore. His jaw dropped. You can talk. She turned her head just slightly, lips curved. I choose not to. Well, I'm honored to be the one you decided to roast first. That was how it began. Small things. A comment here, a correction there. One day she rewired his entire security grid because, in her words, your perimeter alarm could be tripped by an ambitious breeze. Another day she silently handed him a repaired holoscreen just minutes after he'd thrown it across the room during a game of Who Deleted My Mission Logs. She still didn't tell him much about herself. He suspected she wouldn't trust him even if he offered her his entire collection of rare bootleg ration flavors. But there were cracks now, thin hairline fractures in the silence, and Reich, who was terrible at social cues but very good at noticing when someone stopped planning his murder, knew something was changing. He tested the boundaries. You know, if you were secretly royalty or a warlord or a telepathic assassin, I just want to say, great job playing the long game. She raised an eyebrow. Not that I'm accusing you of anything, he added quickly. Just saying, you have the vibe. The ears help. She said nothing, but later that evening, he found a data file loaded onto his tablet. It was encrypted, ancient format, not Terran standard. He tried to open it. Got nothing. Tried again. Static. Then a single image blinked onto the screen. Blurry, distorted, but unmistakably Eliah, dressed in regal armor, flanked by banners that shimmered with symbols he couldn't read. Behind her, a skyline of towers made of crystal and smoke. He stared at the image for a long time. The next morning he didn't bring it up. Neither did she. Instead, he handed her a cup of tea and asked if she wanted to help him reorganize the workshop. She agreed without a word. They spent hours dismantling and reassembling old drone parts, half of which Reich named things like Sir Buzz-a-Lot and Trash Can Jones. Eliah rolled her eyes exactly once. He called that progress. Then came the message from command. A security breach had occurred. Unknown signals traced to the sector. Minor for now, but it put all outposts on alert. Reich pretended not to notice Eliah's stillness as the report played. She stared at the screen too long, shoulders tensed in a way that told him this wasn't minor. Someone you know? He asked gently. She didn't answer. Someone who'd be really upset about you fixing my toaster instead of conquering galaxies. Still nothing. He leaned back. So, I should cancel the pizza drone then. She blinked. What's a pizza? He grinned. Oh, you are in for a treat. The tension broke, slightly, enough to breathe again. But later that night, Reich heard her pacing, not silently like before. Restlessly, he sat up watching her silhouette move across the small living space, a ghost caught between escape and decision. He didn't stop her, but he did say, whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone. She paused, just for a second, then kept walking. Reich's alarm went off at 0600 with the cheerful shriek of a dying seagull. He slapped it silent and rolled over, face planting into a tangle of clothes, data pads, and one very suspicious half-eaten ration bar. He groaned, swung his legs out of bed, and immediately stepped on a microspanner. The pain was sharp, cosmic, and vaguely personal. Good morning to me, he muttered, limping toward the kitchenette. Eliah was already there, of course, seated with terrifying poise, sipping from the one mug in their unit, not covered in grease or sarcastic slogans. She didn't look at him when he entered, but she did slide a warm cup across the table with practiced indifference. You make that? He asked. Yes. What is it? She paused. You don't want to know. He drank it anyway. It tasted like pepper, with a hint of despair and possibly motor oil. He coughed, nodded appreciatively, and gave a weak thumbs up. Outside, the base buzzed with the kind of urgency that usually meant someone important was arriving or someone stupid had pressed the wrong button. Again. Reich dressed in record time and was halfway through attaching his leg armor when his comm lit up with a priority ping. He glanced at Eliah. She was already watching him. Trouble? She asked. Only if I have to give another report to Commander Threx. That guy makes furniture look expressive. He jabbed the comm. A distorted voice filled the room. Corporal Reich, report to Hangar 3. Now. He sighed. Yep, trouble. When they arrived at the hangar, Reich immediately spotted the problem. A sleek alien vessel hovered on the landing platform, definitely not from any Terran fleet. Too elegant, too alive. It pulsed faintly, like it was breathing. Around it, human techs milled nervously, weapons half raised, trying very hard not to look like they were panicking. Unregistered, one muttered. Landed itself. No transponder. No heat sig. No door. Reich turned to Eliah. Any guesses? She didn't answer, but her posture shifted slightly, as if some internal alarm had just gone off and was telling her to either run or fight. He recognized the look. She wore it every time someone from command said the word ownership. Then the ship opened. Not like a hatch. More like it peeled, layers of metal pulling back silently, exposing a chamber lit with soft violet light. From within stepped two figures. Both tall, both clad in iridescent armor etched with symbols that shimmered and shifted when you blinked. Both with long ears. Friends of yours, Reich whispered. She said nothing. The taller one stepped forward. We seek the one known as Liera Sin. Reich blinked. Bless you. The alien's eyes narrowed. That was not a sneeze. I figured. It's just... Never mind. Who's Liera? The second figure's gaze locked on Eliah. You. Reich looked between them. Okay, plot twist. Eliah didn't move. You have been missing for 3 standard cycles. The taller one continued. Your people demand your return. Your empire is in disarray. The council has fractured. Reich raised his hand. Quick question. When you say empire, are we talking like metaphorical empire? Or galaxy-crushing, battle fleet kind of empire? The alien stared at him. Right, that answers that. Eliah stepped forward, eyes unreadable. Her voice was quiet but firm. I am not ready. The 2 figures exchanged a look. The galaxy is not waiting. Reich, sensing he was rapidly losing control of the situation he never had control of in the first place, inserted himself between them. Hey, maybe she needs a minute. Or, I don't know, some context? A brochure? You can't just show up in your fancy armor and spaceship and demand people come with you like it's some kind of interstellar Uber. Eliah touched his arm. Reich, he looked at her. You're really the queen? Yes. You couldn't have mentioned this earlier? Like maybe after I handed you a mop and asked you to clean the floor? Her lips twitched. You were very convincing. He groaned. I'm going to need more tea, possibly with sedatives. The aliens did not wait. They stepped forward, reaching for her. Reich instinctively moved to block them again, but she raised a hand. I'll go, she said, but on my terms. One of the aliens frowned. You do not command anymore. She turned, eyes glowing faintly now. Do you wish to test that? Reich stepped back. Okay, let's not vaporize anyone in the hangar today. That'd be bad for morale. There was a tense pause. Then reluctantly the 2 bowed slightly. You have until the next solar rise. With that, they vanished into the ship, which sealed itself like a metal flower folding shut. The air hummed with residual energy. Reich turned to Eliah. Okay, so, that happened. She nodded. You're a queen. Yes. Of a galactic empire. Yes. And I've been feeding you ration mush and calling you Eliah the whole time. Yes. Well, he blew out a breath. At least tell me I didn't make you scrub the toilet. She raised an eyebrow. You did. He cringed. Your people are going to kill me. She studied him for a moment, then said, Not if I tell them you saved me. He laughed. Saved you? From what? Boredom? She didn't answer. Instead, she went to the corner of the hangar, sat on a crate, and began quietly disassembling his hoversled prototype. It was the clearest sign she was upset. Reich joined her, picking up tools without asking. You don't want to go back, he said. She shrugged. It is not that simple. Of course it's not. It's never simple when crowns are involved. I once accidentally inherited a goat in a card game. Took me 2 weeks to return it to its rightful owner. Royal goats are temperamental. She looked at him, confused. Goat? He waved it off. Not important. They worked in silence. Then Reich said, You know, if you need backup, I've got a wrench and a moderately effective glare. She smiled. Thank you. You're welcome, your majestic glowiness. She rolled her eyes. Later, back at the prefab, she packed a small bag. He watched her, unsure what to say. Finally, he asked, You're really going, aren't you? Yes. He nodded. Well, I hope your empire has coffee. Good coffee. None of this synth sludge. And maybe a chair that doesn't squeak when you sit in it. She touched his hand. I will return. He grinned, masking the weird twist in his gut. Just don't forget the little people. I won't, she said. Then she walked out the door. Reich spent the next 40 hours doing the kind of productive tasks only heartache and confusion could fuel. Like alphabetizing his spare parts collection and deep cleaning a coolant hose with a toothbrush. It was the kind of meticulous distraction work that said, No, I'm not thinking about the alien queen who used to live here and definitely didn't steal my best mug. He found the mug eventually, hidden behind a datapad tower and full of violet dust that sparkled suspiciously. He debated licking it, but even his curiosity had limits. Mostly, The base had adjusted to the news of Eliah's true identity, with the grace of a one-legged droid doing ballet. Half the command staff panicked and tried to update galactic diplomatic protocols. The other half panicked and tried to find their best uniforms. Reich just kept his head down and tried not to think about how the universe had gotten weirder than usual, and that was saying something for a guy who once ate soup that blinked. At exactly the wrong moment, his comm buzzed. Again. No pleasant chime, no soothing tone, just a flat, aggressive bzzzt that screamed bureaucratic doom. "Corporal Reich," came Commander Threx's voice. "Report to briefing room 7. Immediately." Reich saluted the air and made his way through the base's winding corridors, trying not to look too confused or too recently abandoned by alien royalty. When he entered the briefing room, he found a panel of grim-faced officials and one surprisingly cheerful diplomat from the Terran Interstellar Accord, wearing a tie that seemed to be alive. "Corporal," Threx said, "we require your insight." Reich blinked. "Into what?" "The Queen." "She's not my queen." The diplomat leaned forward. "She is now a crucial piece in Terran-alien relations. Her cooperation could shift the balance of several treaties, not to mention open trade routes through—" "I'm sorry," Reich said, holding up a hand. "Are you under the impression I have any influence over a glowing space monarch who can command ships with her mind?" There was silence. Then Threx said, "You did, however, convince her to stay long enough for the diplomats to arrive." "Technically," Reich said, "I bribed her with pancakes." The diplomat scribbled that down furiously. "Pancakes. Noted." Before the conversation could derail into breakfast strategies, a klaxon blared through the base. The lights shifted to red. Reich looked at Threx. Threx looked at the ceiling like he regretted ever joining the military. An urgent voice cracked through the intercom. "Unidentified ship approaching. Shields raised, weapons armed." Reich felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. "Friends of Eliah?" Threx grunted. "If they are, they brought the kind of friendship that usually ends in vaporization." Outside, chaos bloomed. Troops ran. Cannons powered up. Defense drones rose from the ground like metal hornets with bad attitudes. Reich sprinted to the observation platform just in time to see a vessel drop from hyperspace like a thunderclap. It was massive, long and sinuous, dark gold plating rippling with internal energy, bristling with weapons that didn't look purely technological. A voice echoed across the base, not from speakers, but directly into minds. "Surrender the Queen or be annihilated." Reich winced. "Well, they're not here to deliver flowers." Then just as suddenly, another ship dropped out of hyperspace. Smaller, sleeker, familiar. It was Eliah. She didn't wait for permission. Her ship knifed through the sky, leaving a trail of crystalline vapor, and slammed to a hover just above the enemy craft. There was a pause. Then another voice. Hers. "Stand down or I will personally reset your brains through your navigation consoles." The golden ship twitched. Then reluctantly it powered down its weapons. Reich exhaled so hard he nearly lost his balance. An hour later, in the quiet, post-panic lull, Eliah stepped onto the base. She wore formal armor now, iridescent and ancient-looking, but her face was exactly the same. Calm, cool, with that faint smirk that meant she'd already thought through all your arguments and found them amusing. Reich met her in the corridor. "You came back," he said. "I said I would." "Yeah, well, people say lots of things, like, I'll wash my hands before touching the food replicator." "Lies. All lies." She smiled. "I had business to finish." He tilted his head. "And by business, you mean stopping an intergalactic civil war by threatening to scramble someone's neurons with their own ship controls?" They were insubordinate. They were 20 kilometers long. She shrugged. "So," Reich said, hands in pockets, "you're queen again?" "Not officially. The council has agreed to consider reinstatement after I demonstrate stability." He raised an eyebrow. "Stability? You?" "I'm trying." There was a pause. "Do you need help?" he asked. "Yes." He blinked. "Wait, really?" "I was going to offer sarcasm and snacks, but if you're serious—" "I am serious," she said. "You understand humans better than most of my court, and they need to understand humanity now more than ever. So you want me to be, what? Your royal translator?" "Advisor," he grinned. "Can I have a cape?" "We'll see." "I want a cape that flutters even when there's no wind." "Of course." They walked together through the base, past wide-eyed soldiers and confused mechanics. One tech dropped a wrench directly onto their own foot and didn't seem to notice. "So," Reich said, "what's next?" She glanced at him. "I must return to the core worlds, re-establish order, prevent bloodshed, mediate between fracturing planetary coalitions, possibly avoid being assassinated." Reich nodded. "Sounds chill. And you?" "Well, I was going to do laundry, but your plan sounds slightly more exciting." She reached into a pouch and pulled out a glowing, intricately carved stone. She placed it in his hand. It was warm, hummed faintly. "What is it?" "A key." "To what?" "My ship." He stared at it. "You're letting me fly your ship?" "Number, I'm letting you board it." "Still pretty good." She looked at him for a long moment. "Are you sure you're ready?" He held up the stone. "Eliah, I just alphabetized my spare nuts and bolts. I think I'm overdue for something completely insane." She nodded once. "Then pack light." He saluted. "One cape, coming right up." As they turned the corner, he added, "Does your empire have real pancakes?" "Yes, with syrup. Fruit syrup, made from a tree that sings." Reich whistled. "Now that's breakfast diplomacy." The ship was silent as it cut through the vast expanse of space, its sleek form gliding past stars and moons in the distance. Reich stood at the observation window, staring out at the unknown, while Eliah sat at the control panel, her fingers moving across holographic displays with the ease of someone born to command. "You know, I still don't get it," Reich said after a while. "I mean, you're the queen of the galaxy, and yet you're sitting here cruising around with a guy who still thinks stellar navigation is the thing you do when you get lost." Eliah glanced at him, an eyebrow raised. "I'm trusting you with a key to my ship. That's already a monumental step." "Yeah, well, I haven't crashed it yet," Reich grinned, tapping a button on the control console. "And I've only set the emergency beacon off twice." She smirked. "Twice? Well, progress, I suppose." Reich leaned back, stretching. "So this is it then? No more base? No more cleaning drills?" "No more cleaning drills," Eliah said with a small smile. "But there's a lot more to do, Reich. A galaxy to unite, an empire to stabilize. A lot of politicians to convince." "Sounds like a party." He lowered his voice. "Can't we just play cards or something?" Eliah's lips quirked. "We can, but I wouldn't recommend it. I have a reputation to maintain." "Oh, right. You're the queen. I keep forgetting." "And you," she said, turning fully toward him, "are the one who's going to help me turn this into something that lasts." He nodded. "Yeah, I guess. I mean, I can't exactly go back to regular soldiering after this. I'm sort of in the deep end now." Eliah stood up and moved to the main console, her back straightening as she looked out at the stars. "You've been in the deep end since we met, Reich. You just didn't realize it until you were waist-deep in alien politics and star systems." "Fair point," he replied, leaning against the wall. "Still, the view's better up here, huh?" A soft, amused laugh escaped her. "It's not the view, Reich. It's the journey that matters." The ship hummed gently as they flew through hyperspace, the tension of their previous days ebbing away. It was the first time Reich had felt truly at ease since everything had started. The galaxy was wide and dangerous, yes, but it was also full of possibilities. They stopped at a small station in the Outer Rim, a neutral ground for intergalactic trade. Reich stepped off the ship and found himself face-to-face with dozens of diplomats, representatives, and a group of rather nervous-looking military leaders. "Look at this crowd," he muttered to Eliah. "How do you manage all this?" "I don't," she replied with a grin. "I have you now." He laughed. "Right. I'll be your backup." The first meeting was a mess, as expected. There were cultural clashes, confusing protocols, and several awkward pauses where no one knew who was supposed to speak first. But through it all, Reich found himself stepping in where he could, translating, explaining, cracking a joke when things got too tense. At one point, an alien diplomat from a neighboring system said something in an ancient dialect that left the entire room frozen in silence. Reich stood up. "Sorry, can't help you with that one. My second language is sarcasm, not galactic archaic." The room fell silent, then a ripple of laughter spread through the diplomats. Eliah shot him a surprised glance, but there was a warmth in her eyes he hadn't seen before. "You're good at this," she said later as they made their way back to the ship. "Maybe better than I thought." "Hey, don't get used to it. I'm still just a soldier, remember?" She didn't respond right away, But as they stepped back aboard the ship, her gaze lingered on him. Number, you're not just a soldier anymore. You're part of this. Reich stood there for a moment, absorbing the weight of her words. There had been a time when he'd only seen himself as a small cog in the machine of war, fighting battles, following orders, and hoping for some semblance of meaning. But that had changed. He had changed. He had seen more than just the battlefield now. He had seen what it meant to fight for something larger than himself, to help someone who had everything to lose. He had learned to lead, even in ways that made him uncomfortable. Eliah sat in the captain's seat and looked over the stars, her mind clearly already moving ahead to the next political battle, the next conversation, the next decision. Reich sat across from her, leaning back in his chair, his eyes on the same stars. But for the first time, he wasn't just thinking about the next battle, he was thinking about the future. You know, he said after a while, breaking the silence, when I signed up for this whole being a soldier thing, I didn't exactly picture this. Eliah chuckled softly. You mean galactic politics? Interplanetary war? Nearly being vaporized by giant alien ships? Well, I was going for pancakes and low-risk adventures. But yeah, this works too. She smiled. You'll get used to it. Just, don't get too comfortable. Reich raised an eyebrow. Does that mean no more pancakes? No promises, she said with a grin. But I'll always save you the last one. Reich nodded, feeling the weight of his journey settle around him like an old familiar coat. He had started this path unsure of where it would take him. Now, as the ship glided through the endless reaches of space, he felt a strange sense of peace. The unknown was vast, but it was no longer something to fear. Together, he and Eliah would shape the future of the galaxy. And for once, Reich was ready. The galaxy had a queen, and somehow, against all odds, he was right there with her. Guess I'd better start looking into what a royal bodyguard wears, he muttered half to himself. Eliah chuckled softly, her hand gently brushing the control panel. I think a cape would suit you. Reich grinned. Now you're talking. The ship hummed as it sailed forward, the stars stretching out into the endless possibilities of tomorrow.